While Europe fumbled with crude iron tools, your ancestors perfected bronze art that museums now call impossible for the time. The technique. Lost wax casting, a method so sophisticated that modern foundries still struggle to replicate what African hands mastered 25 centuries ago. When archaeologists first unearthed the bronze plaques of Benin, they couldn't believe their eyes. The detail was breathtaking: warriors with intricate armor, royal ceremonies captured in metal, facial expressions so lifelike they seemed ready to speak. The year was 1897, and these Europeans had never seen anything like it. Their conclusion: Africans couldn't possibly have created such masterpieces. They were wrong. Dead wrong. In the Kingdom of Benin, in what we now call Nigeria, African bronze casters had been perfecting their craft since 500 BC. While Rome was still a collection of mud huts, the Edo people were creating bronze artworks that would make Michelangelo weep. The lost wax method, or cire perdue, as the French would later claim to discover, was already ancient wisdom in African hands. Here's how your ancestors achieved the impossible. First, they sculpted their vision in clay with painstaking detail. Every fold of cloth, every strand of hair, every ceremonial marking, all captured in art. Then came the genius. They covered this clay model with a thin layer of pure beeswax, adding even finer details that would become the final bronze surface. But this was just the beginning of their mastery. The wax model was then encased in another layer of clay, creating a perfect mold. When heated, the wax melted away, hence lost wax, leaving an exact hollow space between the inner and outer clay shells. Into this space, molten bronze was poured at temperatures exceeding 1000 degrees Celsius. The precision required: absolute. 1 degree too hot or too cold, and months of work would be ruined. The bronze itself tells another story of African innovation. While other civilizations struggled with basic metallurgy, African smiths had mastered complex alloys. They knew exactly how much copper to mix with tin, zinc, and lead to achieve different properties. Some bronzes were harder for weapons, others more pliable for detailed artwork. This wasn't trial and error, this was scientific understanding passed down through generations of master craftsmen. In Ife, the spiritual heart of Yorubaland, bronze heads emerged from the earth that made art historians question everything they thought they knew about African capabilities. These weren't primitive artifacts, they were sophisticated portraits with such anatomical accuracy that early researchers insisted they must have been created by lost European explorers. The racism was breathtaking. Rather than acknowledge African genius, they invented fantasy explanations. The truth they couldn't accept. These bronze masterpieces represented the pinnacle of a tradition that stretched back millennia. The terracotta heads of Nok culture, dating to 500 BC, show the same sophisticated understanding of human anatomy and artistic expression. This wasn't borrowed knowledge, this was indigenous African innovation that would later influence art traditions across the continent. Consider the technical challenges your ancestors overcame daily. Creating a bronze cast requires understanding thermal expansion, metal composition, mold engineering, and fire management. One mistake at any stage destroys everything. Yet African bronze casters achieved success rates that modern factories would envy, creating artworks that have survived 25 centuries without significant deterioration. The Benin bronzes alone numbered in the thousands before British forces looted them in 1897. Each plaque told stories of African courts, ceremonies, and daily life with a sophistication that rivaled any European art of the same period. These weren't decorative trinkets, they were historical documents cast in bronze, preserving African civilization in metal form. What moves me most is thinking about the hands that created these masterpieces. The steady fingers shaping wax details in candlelight. The experienced eyes judging when bronze reached perfect fluidity. The patient hearts waiting as molds cooled, knowing that beneath the clay lay either triumph or heartbreak. These artists signed their work not with names, but with excellence so distinctive that experts can identify individual bronze casters across centuries of work. Your ancestors didn't just make art, they poured their souls into bronze, creating beauty that time cannot touch. When you walk through museums and see African bronzes labeled as influenced by European techniques, remember this truth: your people were casting bronze masterpieces when Europe was still learning to work iron. The lost wax method wasn't lost to Africa, it was perfected here, treasured here, and hidden from you deliberately. Every African bronze that survived colonialism carries within it the genius of ancestors who refused to let their knowledge die. When you understand this legacy, you realize that creativity doesn't run in your veins by accident, it flows there by inheritance. Follow Ponolens as we continue uncovering the artistic genius they tried to bury.